The Supreme Court has ruled on health care, but that doesn't mean that the debate is over with. Far from it. Yesterday, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell had some interesting things to say about where that body might go on the law. Let's take a listen.
Reconciliation is available because the Supreme Court has now declared it a tax. They have unearthed the massive deception that was practiced by the president and the Democrats, constantly denying it was a tax. You heard.
Okay, that was Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, talking about the road they might go down to fight the health care law. Let's go right now to Louise Radnofsky in Washington. Louise, good morning. And what does that mean, reconciliation, for those of us not in the Beltway know?
Well, there's a couple of things that people outside the Beltway and a lot of people inside the Beltway need to know. First of all, it is that Republicans currently have 47 seats in the Senate, which is both short of an absolute majority and also well short of the 60 so-called supermajority that they would need in order to be successful in repealing the health laws they've said they want to do. So what they are turning to is this plan called reconciliation. And that's something that probably wouldn't be helpful to them until after November elections, in which they picked up a handful of seats. But in short, what it says is if they get to 51, they can use this parliamentary quirk rather than the full-blown version that would require them to have 60 seats that they just don't have and aren't really projected by a lot of nonpartisan observers to get.
So I'm clear on that. So if they get to 51, then this avenue is open to them.
Then this avenue is open to them. And what this avenue is a procedural issue in the Senate that allows you to basically go ahead with budget-related issues or tax-related issues with 51 votes rather than the customary 60. So what they're saying is that because the Supreme Court labeled the individual mandate as a tax, they believe that that's squarely within the definition of the budget reconciliation process, and that's how they'd be able to use it.
Now, is the Supreme Court the last word on whether this is a tax or not, or is it someone in the legislative branch who has to decide that?
The last word is and has always been that of the parliamentarians, the Senate parliamentarian, which is an employee of the Senate, a nonpartisan position traditionally, and that's the person who decides. Now, what some of the observers that we spoke to yesterday said was it would be very hard for them to imagine, and one of them is a former parliamentarian himself, it would be very hard for them to imagine a parliamentarian being able to essentially overrule or disregard the verdict of the Supreme Court on this one.
Right. Now, of course, the first word might come from the House of Representatives, which on July 11th, I guess, is going to take a vote on repealing the health law overall. What's going to happen with that?
Well, they are going to have a vote on July 11th. It's worth noting that they've already had 29 votes as well to that effect.
29. So, of course, no matter what they do, it's really not going to go anywhere in the Senate right now, right?
Right. And whatever the Senate does, and Senate Democrats said that it may be possible for Republicans to schedule their vote ahead of November, but it doesn't really matter because they don't have the votes to pass it. So there's going to be a block on the House, a block on the Senate, and of course, a block at the White House for folks who want to repeal the law and that the president's never going to sign that. So really there aren't any legislative avenues open. Now that's of course something you've heard from Republicans who've really refocused their attentions after the Supreme Court case on the elections. They say that if you want to repeal the law, the only way to do it is to vote them in November.
Clearly, we hear the Republicans saying repeal it. We hear the Democrats saying let's move on. One thing I've been curious about is, have the Republicans been proposing any sort of alternative?
They've been proposing a range of alternatives. Right now, their main alternative seems to be listening to the American people, as they put it. The idea that they don't want to rush forward with some either big or specific bill at this moment. So their plan is really to get a plan.
They've had years to consider this.
Well, they've had years being the minority.
They just want to keep it focused on the repeal rather than coming up and saying, here's another choice.
There's certainly a very strong argument that the way the court ruled put them in a much better position, at least for the next few months, because rather than having a messy fight about what kind of repeal the party as a whole should get around, they can just focus on the one area of consensus that's pretty much indubitable for the Republican Party, which is they don't like the Democrats' law.